Hello guys, welcome back to the studio with me, Riverside, aka Ginger, aka top dancehall producer out of the UK, Afrobeats, you name it. Today I am going to be addressing an issue that a lot of producers have, mainly producers. So let's say you're a producer, you make good beats, but you want to get your beats to the right artists, right? You might want to work with somebody like Mostak, Bugsy Malone, or if you're in America, you might want to work with Little Baby, Uzi Vert, Kendrick Lamar, all these kind of artists. And a lot of the time, what we'll do is we'll go on our phone, right? We'll go on our phone and we'll go on like something like Instagram, and we'll be like messaging away and be like, hey bro, I'm a really great producer out of such and such place, and I'd really like to work with you, right? Knowing the fact that this person has probably got millions of followers, right? So if you're not a pretty girl, they're probably just going to skip right past your DM. If you're not somebody with a verified tick, they'll probably skip past your name. These artists will get probably hundreds, if not thousands of DMs every single day in their inbox, be like, hey bro, let's work. You know, they're probably even subscribed to email lists where they get sent beats that they probably go through maybe once or twice a month when they're not doing anything, when they're not on tour, right? That begs the question, how do I then get in the hands, or how do I get my beats in the hands of these artists, right? What I personally do, right, to do this is I'll go on Spotify, for example, right? Now, I'm actually recording this on a GoPro, so I'm going to have to show you how I do this. But essentially, I'll go on Spotify like I'm on now, right? And I'll actually go to the song, right? Now, this song, for example, is just any old song. It's called Frozen. What I'll do is I'll go to the three dots here, and I'll go to show credits. And sometimes it will have here, produced by such and such, right? Now let's say, right, let me just turn the camera back around. Let's just say that this was produced by Bugatti Beats. Then what you do is you go to Bugatti's Beats page and then you inbox them. Now I guarantee that the artist's producer will, number one, have less followers than the artist himself, which will mean you have more chance of actually getting in contact and being like, hey bro, I can see that you've worked recently with such and such artists. I'm a producer too. Don't directly ask them what the contact details are to work with to work with their artist, basically, because they're not going to give it to you. But instead, offer them some form of value. So be like, hey bro, discovered that you work with such and such as the producer. I'd really like to send you over some loops, or I would really like to come down to the studio and then we can cook up together, perhaps, right? They're either going to say yes, they're either going to say no, they're either going to ignore you, right? But that's one way of doing it. Don't just be messaging the artists who you want to get in contact with and finding their producer and be like, hey bro, I really need to get in touch with your artist. Can I send you over some beats to send over to them? They're going to be like, why should I do you that favor? Okay, so that's the first way of doing it. The other way of doing it, right, is a bit more trickier, and it involves finding out who mixes, who's the audio engineer for this artist. A way to do this usually is to go on, for example, their Instagram page. Sometimes they'll take pictures in the studio. Sometimes they'll even take pictures with the engineer that they're working with, or perhaps the other producer that they're working with always uses a go-to engineer. This stuff, you know, this information with the engineer, you can usually find on their social medias with like, you know, like producers that they work with. They'll probably use their producer's engineer, or maybe their producer will be an engineer, right? But sometimes they'll use dedicated engineers, and you can usually find this by just going on their socials and seeing what studios they go to, then Googling that studio and then finding out who works there, who is the engineer, and then messaging them and be like, oh, by the way, I can see that you work with such and such. Would I be able to come to the studio one day to mix some of my beats? Then when you're there, you'll have this engineer mixing your beats who also works with this artist that you want to work with, and then you could maybe drop it in and say, oh, by the way, I see that you work with such and such. You know, do you think that he would like these beats? And maybe the engineer would turn around and say to you, yeah, I'll tell you what, send over a few and I'll make sure that he hears it the next time that he comes and records, right? So this, my friends, this is the best way to get in the pocket of the artists that you want to work with. There's no point, like I said, going on Instagram, messaging an artist that's got over 100,000 followers, a million followers. Sometimes even if they have 10,000 followers, they're not necessarily going to see your message. So this is a great way of bypassing all of that and thinking outside of the box. Anyway, guys, if you found this video useful, I really appreciate it if you thumbs it up, because it does help me out on the YouTube algorithm. And if you're not part of the channel family, please do consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video for some more tips and tricks. See you then.